We're back with Kutaki Podcast, Episode 3. I'm the host, Shawn, and today we'll be talking mainly with Adam McColl, who was actually my original instructor in Canada before I moved to Japan, and we'll be talking to him about his early days of training, and that will take up most of the podcast today, actually. So without any further delay, we'll get straight into that interview. Hi, Adam.
Hey.
Good to have you on today.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Thank you. You're on this trip to Japan here now,
Yeah.
and you've been here for how long now?
Just ending a 3-week trip.
Okay. How have you enjoyed it so far?
It's been great. Really good to be back here.
Mm-hmm.
Good to see Soke again, and get to train with different Shihan, and also just meet, reacquaint myself with some people I knew from the past, and meet a lot of new people.
Okay.
So, yeah, as the Bujinkan is, you meet people from all over the place. So,
Yeah.
which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's a big benefit of the Bujinkan, and the fact that it's one of the positive aspects of Soke having such a centralized way of running it, because it forces everyone to come to Japan, and then you meet so many other people from other countries and other cultures, whereas in other martial arts, like, they have their own headquarters in their own countries and things like that, so people don't actually travel to Japan so much.
Yeah.
For example, if you're doing karate or judo or something like that. And so I think in many cases, maybe practitioners of those other arts kind of lose out on that aspect
Yeah.
that we are
Yeah.
kind of blessed with.
Yeah, and Hombu is this sort of neutral ground where everybody is the same. There's everyone comes in, and unlike a lot of systems where the hierarchies are quite strict.
Yeah.
Here people just come into Hombu and you don't know who you're training with. The rank really is definitely down on the list of priorities. It's just get together and train, and in that way it allows you to just walk up to someone and say, hey, want to train tonight, without worrying about their training background or who they are elsewhere in the world, which is really quite wonderful.
Yeah, that's true. And maybe having fewer number of belt colors has something to do with that as well.
Definitely, yeah.
So, yeah, I find from my experience, like you're saying, there's much less of a problem with training with somebody like of a different rank than you are, a different belt than you are in the Bujinkan, at least in Japan a lot of times. I was actually Q rank when I first came to Japan, and I was very fortunate to have a lot of people here who had no problem training with somebody who wasn't wearing a black belt,
Yeah.
So I think there is some of it, I think, but it's like not as much as in a lot of other arts, at least not in karate, at least.
Definitely.
Not when I was training karate anyway.
Yeah, and I agree. Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got started with Bujinkan training? Came into the dojo?
Sure. I like a lot of people, I got exposed to it through different books. The Andy Adams book, Invisible Assassins, was probably one of the first that I read. And then the Steve Hayes books, the early books with Steve Hayes. And I'd already been training in other Japanese martial arts, judo and karate, and was literally walking along a main street in Ramsgate, England, where I was living at the time. And there was a poster in a window. So I called up, and next week went around and met the instructor, Alan Collins, and started training with him.
Good.
Yeah.
And how long did you train with him for?
I started training, that was in about 84, 85. 87 I left and came to Canada, or went back to Canada for a year, and then went back to the dojo and stayed at the dojo until I moved up to London in, I guess it was the middle of 89 for work.
Okay.
So so I was kind of in and out of the dojo because of traveling, but I kind of maintained a connection with Alan even when I was away from the dojo. He was sort of, I'd call him up, but when I was in Victoria in 87, I had a small training group for the first time. I was kind of out on my own.
In 87?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know there was training in Victoria that long ago. Wow. All right.
That might be news to some people. Yeah.
Yeah, there was actually a recent thread about training groups in Victoria.
Yeah.
So
No.
I guess you were probably one of the first ones there.
Definitely. Yeah. Actually, at that time, I made contact with John Wilson, who was, as far as I knew at that point, the only person in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there were others that were connected with Steve Hayes, and since learned that Jerome had been in Canada as well, in the Toronto area.
Okay.
But yeah, so I made contact with John, and but he was a long way away, and I was pretty young, so I wasn't in a position to just travel out there and see him. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I came back to the UK and trained with Alan some more, and then when I was in London, I did some training with Dave Heald and Chris Roweth.
Okay.
My work schedule was pretty hectic, so I kind of fitted in when I could.
Right.
Yeah.
So you traveled around a bit and did a bit of training with different people.
Yeah, which was really good. In one way, it exposed me to lots of different interpretations of early Bujinkan training.
Oh, okay. That's important, I think.
Which is important.
Mm-hmm.
I know my Kihon is sort of this, or was this interesting meld of all of these different ideas that I kind of stole from people.
Okay.
And of course, when I came to Japan and then got to see again Kihon here, that kind of really affected what I was doing.
Right. Right. But during that early time, Alan was your main teacher.
He was my main teacher, yeah. And in those early days, it was training was he was really only just starting out as well.
I see.
The Bujinkan was at that point had only been introduced to the UK through Brian McCarthy and his affiliation with Bomunte in Sweden. It was great. There were lots of seminars going on. We travel every weekend to a different event, and with the UK being as small as it was, you could just pile in a car and drive for a few hours and be training with people, and
cool,
which was great. Yeah, I think my second or third seminar I went to, Sven Erik was the guest instructor, who was at that time a Nidon.
Wow.
Okay. Which was a wonderful experience because he was very different from anyone else that I'd seen at that point. So I still have these wonderful memories of him out in a field in a scout camp in Scotland, spinning around in sort of a loose hira no kamai, saying, "I am the wind," Cool. Great stuff. Anyway.
Well, you had mentioned that your instructor Alan had made a trip to Japan. When or at what stage of your training did that happen?
That happened around '86, and it was great. He came back, and when he came back from Japan, he basically came back and said, "Okay, we're starting again," as many people do. They come over, and especially at that time. So we kind of had to relearn a lot of things, and were exposed to a lot of new ideas because of that, which was really great to have early on.
Well, I think too, even now though, people who have lost touch with Japan for a certain number of years, it's all because Hatsumi Sensei is still progressing and the whole Bujinkan is still progressing. It's almost like if people lose touch for a certain certain amount of time, it's almost like when they come over, it's much different than when they last saw it. Definitely. And then when they go back, they basically tell the same thing to their groups. I think in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Well, definitely. It's been 12 years since my last trip here.
Really?
And I can definitely say that was far too long a time. And coming back, exactly, my first few sessions at Hombu Dojo were just, we'll keep this a family-oriented show, but, just amazing. The difference was incredible. Hatsumi Sensei, everybody over here is just moving, it's just incredible. It's still him, and it's still, Bujinkan Budo, but what he is doing, how he is doing what he's doing, I think is just amazing. There's a feeling that he has, which, I'm stating the obvious for so many people, but for the people that haven't been here, that haven't been exposed to him, that is just indescribable,
Cool.
So it's great to be back over here and to get kind of feed directly from the well again.
Yeah. So do you notice any kind of difference in the way things were done, like specific, like maybe a difference in speaking just from taijutsu itself, or?
Yeah, definitely. Soke now is I mean, every class I've been here, and again, this is from someone kind of coming back into it after so long, is just the emphasis that he has on not clinging to whatever he shows, whether it be, you know, working off of a kata or taking that kata and mutating it in all the directions that he does, is just to take the feeling, the form itself, the physical manifestation of what he's doing is not important, and that's something that was there before, but kata were still they were vehicles, they were definite vehicles then, and I guess because back then as well, a lot of it was being introduced or reviewed, maybe introduced for the first time or just being reviewed. But now, you know, we have people who've been around for very long, and he's aware of this, who know these kata, or at least have got enough of a basis in the kata. So it's a matter of, okay, here's this basic form, which he seems to look around the room and expect everybody to know. And then say, okay, bang, let's go with this. And at the end of every class is this reminder to not cling to this. Don't take it away. Don't try to write it down. Don't try to capture it. Take the feeling. And that to me is seems to be even more important to him. And it seems like this stage that he's moved into and that he wants to take the Bujinkan into, I think it's wonderful. You know, that the kata collectors are going to have a hard time with what he's doing.
Okay. Well, I mean, no, even at Hatsumi Sensei's classes, even though he is teaching at a very high level, of course there are people from the whole spectrum of levels and experiences in the class.
Yeah.
So when he says things like that, do you feel that he's talking only to the seniors, or is he telling everyone the same thing, or how do you kind of interpret that? I know many people have different kind of interpretations of that, but what do you think?
I think that that message is one that he is, even though he says he's teaching to Judon and above, I think that message is one that I think he wants everybody in the Bujinkan to know, though. My kind of take on things like Kihon and you know, training, if we kind of look at, okay, a raw beginner and what do we do with them, there are certain principles that those people should be taught, but any movement that you do can become a kihon, can become a basis for everything else. You can take any point. You know, we kind of had a talk when we were driving about, you know, kind of this thing of a spiral, and you know, you can kind of plop someone at any point in that spiral, and it relates to every other place within it. So it doesn't matter where in this spiral map you get put, that's where you start from, and ultimately you will explore and discover every other point within it. Yeah,
so it's not a strictly linear view.
And that's how I see it. It's not linear, and those people that try to make it linear, I think, are going to miss things that Soke and the Shihan do. I think if you try to approach this system and this training in a linear fashion, then you miss a lot. And for some people, that's just the way they need to approach things, because that's the way they are. But Soke's really seems to be encouraging people to, as he always has, you know, and sometimes very forcibly changing people's perspectives, which is quite wonderful.
Yeah, he has very creative ways of doing that, for sure. So as a result of the last 3 weeks that you've been here, what has or will change for you now in your training or in your perspective on training? Will the physical ways that you do things change?
Definitely. I mean, even just in the short time I've been here, I feel like my physical movement has changed in a very positive way, and I'm hoping that I can take that and keep kind of moving in the direction that I feel I've been going, just in, you know, the classes that I've done here with everybody. And as far as sharing stuff with people, I know my presentation will be different than it was when I was teaching before. I mean, I've had a break from teaching, which I think has been very good for me, because it's allowed me to get my head out of that that role, which I needed to do.
Yeah.
I was too concerned with other people's development and I'd lost sight of my own. And because of that, I think I actually regressed as a practitioner. So not being a teacher for a few years and then coming over here and being as dry a sponge as I possibly could to absorb what I can has been a very good thing.
Cool. Well, it's been very great to have you participate on the podcast, and it's been really great to see you again after so long.
Yeah,
it's been ages.
It's been wonderful to see you, and this is I'm honored to have been asked to do this.
Do you want to say anything about your training group as we wind it down, or?
Sure. There's I've just registered a domain, which is www.taijutsu.ca, and there isn't anything up there at the moment, but I'll be updating it in the next few weeks, and anyone in the Winnipeg area can use that to contact me.
Cool. Great. Well, hopefully we'll see you back again sometime in the near future.
Definitely will.
Okay, thanks a lot, Adam.
Thank you.
That's about all the time we have for episode 3. In episode 4, hopefully we can work in some music. And as well, if you have a question or comment that you would like to put on the show, just record that yourself in MP3 format and mail it to me at koryu@kutaki.org. That's all for episode 3. Have a good day, everyone.